and the rest we placed at kiosks, mobile monies, shops around, and in some offices where people were not ready to take the measures of prevention. And from then, the food and some little thing we had, we identified elderlies that we gave and some pregnant ladies that benefited from it. But currently, we are using our social media and internet to connect those that are having problems or health problems, though it's related or not to the COVID-19, they are still having emergencies of getting health care. We are trying our best to get for them transport, cars that are allowed to move. We have gotten KCCA Kampala or Kampala. We are partnering with them. Whenever we have a case, we call them. They pick the patient from the house to the hospital. Then from the hospital, they pick them back to their houses. And we have tried to sensitize our group that we have people we placed here and there. We do not accept new entrants in our communities where we are. With local chairpersons and police around us, we are able to identify whoever has come as new and whoever has shown some signs of COVID. We call immediately on the hotlines that are ready. They pick them and take them for testing. Some are coming back with the certificates of testing and they are okay. They are still accepted in the community. However, it is bringing challenges whereby some of the members are getting to the hospital, coming back. Those drivers hired by KCCA want to get some money from them for fuel. They call it for fuel. However, they have ever contacted us and we call the other side. They help in moving them, telling them to take them without all that those expenses. And it is running well. This is what is in Wakiso district, this side of Kampala, Uganda, as we are doing, we as members of Youth Hub Foundation.
Thank you, Murhala, for your contribution. Can I call on Ifat? Are you there? Ifat, have we got you in the call? Okay, there you go.
Ifat, you just have to unmute yourself. You have to unmute yourself. Yeah.
Now
it's good.
Yes.
Hi, this is Ifat Gill speaking on behalf of New Women Connectors. And Najib, I'll be getting back to your questions about pathways for resources and what we've been doing, but just a very quick, brief intro. New Women Connectors started 3 years ago when we noticed the absence of migrant voices and refugee voices in policy and decision-making platforms. We're working on a perspective shift and we're advocating for inclusion rather than just integration. We talk about empowerment and ownership. We advocate to raise awareness through organized forums to feature the voices of refugee and migrant role models who are succeeding in life and different challenges that come with integrating in a European city, any European city. In the light of COVID-19 pandemic, we were quick to listen to the needs of our communities, the communities that we were serving, and we're happy and sad to share some of the learnings. As we all know, women make essential contributions both as leaders and frontline responders but they are also the ones that are hit the hardest in terms of impacts, social, health, and economic impact. What we noticed, I have to say, I have to start with this, is we're a bit overwhelmed with the requests we're getting from women with complaints about increase in domestic violence cases since the families, many families are forced to stay together due to the lockdowns. And while they cannot immediately escape their situation at this point, when many countries, many countries are under lockdown, it has forced us to see the very ugly realities of the societies we're living in, regardless of the city or the country we are in. Our WhatsApp messages sees these kind of messages on a daily basis, where at-risk women and children are forced to live in close confinements with their abusers. So here's, I would like to highlight very quickly some of the initiatives that we have been working on, that we have taken as a New Woman Connector. And I have to say, in terms of support and resources, like our colleague just said from Uganda, we have been relying on community contribution. We've been relying on our own personal capacity and network to pull these projects off in terms of support. We're still not where we would like to be. To highlight 4 of the projects that we started started together with tech communities in Amsterdam. We started a project called We Are One, and this platform provides online sessions which features mental health experts, and you can have mental health sessions for people in need. You can find out more about it on We Are One website. Together with a partner, Code to Change, we're starting Women's Circle, and that's Woman Circle, which is for emotional and psychological mental well-being of the communities we are trying to reach or have been working with. And this project gives physical movement and yoga workshops online to people in need. We just started a campaign called Leading Resilience, which is to raise awareness in different languages, including Arabic, Hindi, Punjabi and Farsi amongst others, to raise awareness about COVID-19 issues. The hashtag, if you want to know about this campaign, is coping to, the digit 2, coping together. Another campaign another project that we're working on together with Code to Change is a launch of an online training for teaching digital skills for people in need, so that they can stay connected with their loved ones and they are able to access the right information, which is very relevant to their region specifically.
Thank
I would
you.
like to
Thank you, Ifat.
This is my last intervention, my last line. I think to give a message to the partners and donors working on this issue, this is the time to invest in migrant women-led initiatives, many of whom are quick on their feet and can self-mobilize to support the groups and communities that they are serving. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ifat. Mustafa, back to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for the intervention on those kind of things. And again, like those are the gaps where we try to identify when it comes to creating a good partnership and direct relationship between donors, governments, and refugee-led organizations. Something that we definitely need to work on more and more. And again, I just want to reiterate on the fact that it is a unique opportunity where we know that the whole international community right now is basically sitting almost doing nothing, but also refugee-led organizations are handling most of the work on the ground. And I think the next point, what would be good just kind of to hear from the floor on, because we do have also, it's a great opportunity that we have a lot of observers on this calls, and basically some of them are donors and some from governments, to kind of just share what are the gaps that we were able to identify that we think governments and donors should be more flexible, should be working on when it comes on creating a direct partnership. I was able to see some of those comments in terms of like, just having to establish an account within a big NGOs, or to have like, again, that kind of relationship to go through another NGOs. But what if what if we want, or what if this relationship has to happen at one point to be directly with refugee-led organization? There are many INGOs and NGOs, and definitely nobody is saying like their work is very important. They will stay there. No one is calling to take on their seats, but basically what we're saying is just to create, because the partnership, the work is already being shared among everyone. So a partnership as a common sense or as just fairness, it should be among everyone. So I would really like to call on you on basically some of the gaps or suggestions that you would have for donors, whether from foundations or governments or others, NGOs. What are the suggestions or gap that you have in mind from a refugee-led perspective that they should actually deal with, or they should work on a little bit more? I was asked to give the floor to Doris to have some comments on this.
Darius, are you on the call?
Yes, I'm on the call, yeah.
Go ahead, please.
Oh yeah, sure. So just to echo a little bit on the partnership side regarding the difficulties we face with the donors when it comes to funding allocations, and particularly to the refugee-led initiative in different countries, and mostly in the APNO region. This is something that actually many of our different networks struggle with, and just for example, most of the refugee-led networks do not have registrations or any formal identity in their community. So when they want to seek for funding, they will face this kind of struggle of getting money to their bank accounts or anything, and this is actually represents a limitation when it comes to refugee participation. So one of the things that I want to just highlight here is the fact that in APNO actually we try to break this kind of barrier and try to hold donors much more accountable, and try to bring conversation between the donors and also the different refugee-led initiative, and see how we can bridge this gap and try to get access to funds directly, even though we have these limitations of registrations or having bank accounts or any other resources that we could actually have because of the documentation problem we have in our refugee communities. So this is one of the issue with the partnership between the donors and with any other stakeholders when we want to run our different initiative in across the countries in the whole Asia Pacific. Yeah. So yeah, I stop there for now.
Thank you very much, Darius. Maybe if I can call on Omar from the Malaysian network. Omar, do we still have you on the call? Omar? Omar? Okay, maybe I can, do we have you or?
Sorry, Najib, Omar's had to leave because we have a lot of distributions to sort out for tomorrow. So I've just shared on the chat basically what he was going to say. But it's basically, I mean, I've sent a longer update about Malaysia, but what we really wanted to share was a survey that was done by the Refugee Coalition of Malaysia, because we had a call actually in the beginning, about 2 weeks ago, at the early stage of the movement control order. And one of the issues that really came up for most of the refugee leaders who were on the call, and they were from different communities, was the issue not just of immediate needs like food and even the health issues, but it was actually about the loss of livelihoods and the inability to pay rent, and the fact that there was really a fear of not being able to pay rent either for shelter, for housing, or for schools, or for organizational offices, or any spaces that refugees were using to organize and of course even to basically just live. So we did this survey, very quick, just about a week, but we actually got about 400 plus responses from many different communities. We had it translated into several languages, into Arabic, into Burmese, into Somali, and the responses were really overwhelming. And the findings were frightening, actually, because we found that 95% of the respondents had lost their livelihood already under the movement control order, which has only been on for 3 weeks now, but people have really lost their livelihoods. 75% could only pay the rent until April, with some savings that they had, and the rest, were already struggling to pay this month's rent. And 40% already, just of the group who responded to this survey, have already been threatened with evictions. And in fact, we've already seen some cases of eviction taking place with certain families, which is extremely worrying. And this is, of course, not something that's only facing refugees. It's also a difficulty that many Malaysians are facing from the lower income group. So we are trying to push for more discussion at the policy level on this by the Malaysian government, and also bringing in the UN, the World Bank, and others to help us think through what policy options might be. And I think this is really a way, this is an issue that has really come from the refugee community and refugee-led organizations highlighting this. It's not, it wasn't really on the top of anybody's agenda until it was brought up by the refugee-led group. So I think this is a really important issue that will continue to be highlighted, because as we know, and as has been said on this call, on this discussion already by so many, it's not only a health issue, obviously, it's going to affect every part of people's lives. And for refugees who are already struggling in the grey zone of not being able to work legally and struggling with basic livelihoods, this is really going to be a huge, huge challenge for so many people. So we'd also like to engage with others who might have experiences. Maybe there are some positive experiences. We did hear that there were some municipalities or some cities in some places that were actually looking at trying to find ways of either subsidizing rent in some way or calling for moratoriums that have been successful. Our strategy now is basically just to call for a moratorium on all evictions in Malaysia, including for refugees, but also for Malaysian citizens, or basically for anyone. But we'd really like to hear if there's anything innovative that anybody's tried or anybody's heard about that could be suggested and could be worked through, with our partners as well as directly to the Malaysian government. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we would like to move to our last part, is coordination and collaboration. As you see in a previous part, which Mustafa and Najiba was facilitating about partnership and solution, and we are in the chat, if we look, we are been sharing so many information about the refugee-led initiative, and they are having so many problems, though they are keep continuing their facilitation towards COVID-19, and even before COVID-19, the way they were working. And we really appreciate if you could send us all these gaps and needs you are think we need to work on. You can send us via our emails and our Facebook chat, and even here you can send your feedback, how you like to be help, how we as a GRN can facilitate. Now I really like to invite our other stakeholder who are here listening this conversation from last 2 hours, what they think about how we can make more inclusive coordination and collaboration towards specifically in the time of COVID-19 crisis. So I would like to invite first of all Anna from Open Society Foundation. Anna, if you are there, please, the floor is yours, and then I will invite Miriam from Oxfam.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm delighted to hear from you. I'm really impressed with the prep work for this call and the incredible work that you've all shared. Highlighted, refugees are now perhaps more than ever absolutely essential frontline responders, and it's really important that we find ways to support you and to elevate your role and creativity in the response to this unprecedented pandemic. Now is a vital moment to claim a more prominent role in the functioning and governance of the refugee system. You're doing it very tangibly through actions in the Global Refugee Forum with the participation pledge, but also through real action in this response that is decisive, that's drawing on resources that you don't have, and this call is one piece of evidence of it. I think if we work together, we have an opportunity to shift the status quo in refugee response. And this is what my organization, the Open Society Foundations, is really aiming to do. It's to get resources to local actors, including refugee-led actors, and advocate for locally owned responses. That's locally owned by national local authorities, that's locally owned by refugees and host communities, and we think this is an essential piece of the way forward. As highlighted by Mustafa and Najiba and others, it's absolutely critical to coordinate and network as much as possible. Refugee-owned spaces are very, very important to ensure that you're speaking for yourself, sharing strategies, and developing a greater sense of shared purpose. At this moment, though, you must very proactively engage with other stakeholders who have resources, supplies, and a real willingness to help refugees respond. We struggle a little bit, though, because sometimes your efforts, or often your efforts, get lost in the bigger responses, in the bigger appeals, and it's very difficult for those willing to help to fund things that they can't see and fund things that aren't necessarily easily fundable. So at this, what we're trying to do in response at this moment is to accelerate some of our efforts to make visible the incredible work that you're doing, both the work of our partners like GRN and the Asia Pacific Network of Refugees, but also those who are not yet our partners. As I mentioned, we need a clearer sense of needs and gaps in real time, and critically how you can receive funds, because this is the main sticking point. I agree with Mustafa completely that direct relationships between donors and grantees is absolutely important. It's important to shape our priorities and the kinds of advocacy we're able to do with our peers and with UN institutions. But it's also important to ensure that we're responsive and coming up with meaningful interventions for the ground. So for a foundation like ours, it is admittedly quite difficult to make small grants. The majority of our grants are about $100,000 to $200,000, and we simply don't have the staff or capacity in our legal departments to get a lot of smaller agreements out the door to grassroots organizations. This is the same, and in many cases worse, for our peers. And it's, as you all know, having experienced it firsthand, a real chicken and egg problem. You cannot get funds if you haven't had funds, and you cannot fundraise if you don't have capacity for planning and activities other than immediate response at the moment. There are a lot of things we can do in easing the process of applying for grants, of making opportunities available, of loosening requirements, especially in this immediate response moment, and we're doing that across all of our funding. We're waiving reporting requirements. We're requiring really, really minimal proposals in order to ensure that resources get to where they need to go, but we're still faced with the struggle of not being able to make as many small grants as we would like to. So with some of our peers in philanthropy, we're a private foundation, with some of our peers, we're exploring how we could set up a pooled fund, an information hub that could help with outreach and in some cases cover costs that partners are incurring creatively, paying invoices directly, making small disbursements of resources through, PayPal and other types of funding vehicles. Intermediaries are not ideal. As I said before, like Mustafa says, direct relationships are important, but direct relationships, I think, are possible. We have time to hear from all of you. We have time to speak to all of you. We don't have time to do each individual financial transaction. So I think what would be interesting to hear from you is what kind of intermediary would be appropriate to fostering refugee leadership in this space. We're pursuing a number of other kinds of options. We're looking at scalable crowdfunding solutions and bringing in other donors to match contributions. Again, though, we run into the problem of how you can receive funds. So the more you can share with us about really where the problems are, be it registration, be it not knowing how to engage with possible partners who could receive funding for you, is it capacity, is it not knowing where the opportunities are, are to access funding, the more you can share with us, the more we can try and come up with solutions and then advocate with other donors to really find some creative ways to do this. There are examples. For example, Canada has a fund that prioritizes funding to grassroots women's groups. Surely there's ways to do this for refugee-led groups as well, even despite some of the challenges that legal status and bankability, access to finance bring. So with that, I'll just say very happy to be directly in touch, and please do reach out to Anila and Najiba if you would like my direct coordinates. Thank you so much, and I really hope we can take advantage of this moment to get some resources to you. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Anna, for sharing and really for your support. And you are supporting a refugee-led initiative like GRN very well. We really want you to say thank you. So now I'd like to invite Mariam from Oxfam, so who would like to share about her views and how we can make more flexibility for refugee-led initiative who are really working on the ground, and instead of helping them, this kind of hurdles stopping them to make their efforts maximize. So for Mariam, floor is yours.
Thank you, Anila. And I think you would like me to talk about it within the COVID response context, no?
How we can make more coordination and collaboration for the refugee-led initiative. Yes.
Okay, I will start with the national level on what we are doing at the moment, and then I will come to more regional and global level. At the moment, what we are doing is really working through the Turkish Refugee Council that have national and refugee-led organizations together, and trying to bring all the members of Turkish Refugee Council and to see how the situation for the refugee population in Turkey has changed since the 2018 the Refugee Congress, but also within the framework of within this new developments, the COVID-19 and the coronavirus. And what we have started to do is getting all the refugee-led networks and getting their understanding of what is happening to the refugees in Turkey and what kind of new needs have arisen within this context. And what we are understanding is that from our contact with refugee-led networks here, is that what the new needs, the basic needs of the refugees have increased, no? And because what happened with this lockdown, etc., many refugees that managed to bring income to their house have started not to be able to bring that income because they are not able to work, no? So there are new needs such as buying food to their household, buying hygiene materials to their household. Very basic needs has been arising. No? In that sense, when we talk to the refugee-led organizations and how we can respond, we started to develop a joint advocacy platform where the refugee networks are integrated to national level networks. And one of the issues that the refugee networks wants to push, for example, in Turkey at the moment is there is this emergency social safety network that reached 1.5 million refugees here. So we are working together with them to see whether we can expand the emergency safety network to cover more refugees so that the basic needs can be met. No? So there is a joint advocacy together with the refugee-led organizations, but also national organizations, and towards EU and towards the government and towards implementers of this program to see whether we can cover the ECSN can cover all the needs of the refugees. The other thing that is coming to the as an issue is, for example, in some areas refugees and host communities lost jobs, but in some other areas they didn't. For example, in agriculture, the seasonal workers are still allowed to work. So there is a pandemic platform that has been established, again, looking into organizations that are working on seasonal workers, but then also refugee organizations, to see how the refugees and host community members that are working in seasonal work can be protected. No? The other issue is that another platform that is established is Violence Against Women and Violence Against Children platform. And these platforms are discussing, again, jointly to see how we can address the violence against children and women that is on the rise with this pandemic. And start to increase in this pandemic. And then some of the refugee organizations have warned us that there are two issues that we should be really working on in this context, and we need to change strategies. One is the social integration, and the other localization of aid. And in the localization of aid, because everybody is talking about the UN response plan and how that localization, that plan should be through strengthening the local national civil society organizations. And they are warning us now that within that framework, we should be taking steps to ensure that UN response plan that is foreseeing to respond through national organizations should include refugee-led organizations and women's organizations as well. So in that sense, we are bringing together the refugee-led organizations and seeing how we can ensure that if that plan is put forward and then civil society organizations, national civil society organizations are supported through that plan, how can they have an equal access, like the national organizations, to those funds that might come through the UN response plan. In all this, to summarize, what is important for us through this work is, one, to make sure that we can work with the refugee organizations, like we work with other local organizations, that they have equal access to direct funding. That is one. The second important thing is that the refugee-led organizations can actually work together with the national organizations, and they can be included in the national platforms so that they can influence national agendas together with the civil society organizations in the country. And the third is to look at what is important is to look into specific needs of the refugee population and specific needs of the refugee-led organizations, and to try to respond to those specific needs. Hello?
So yes,
Yeah.
thank you so much, Mariam, for your input and your update. So
and just to say that I mean, I said these three things very important: direct funding, linkages with the national platforms, and to look into specific needs of refugee-led organizations here. But the fourth thing that we are doing with these organizations now is looking into how they can exchange with the other organizations in Europe or Africa or Middle East on exchange of information, strategies, and participatory approaches that might be useful in those other contexts. No? And then the fifth thing that we are looking into it, apart from integration into the national platforms that are created by the civil society here, we are looking into how they can actually participate in the citizen assemblies of the municipalities that has been established here, and how they can become part. And in some municipalities, this has been carried forward, and they included directly refugee-led organizations or refugee representatives, but it is not across Turkey. So we are working with the municipal assemblies, national and regional municipal assemblies, to make sure that refugees and their organizations are represented in the citizens' assemblies that are established by municipalities.
Thank you, Mariam. Sorry, I have to cut you. Hi, so sorry, Mariam, because we really have going to our ending of this conference. So thank you so much for your intervention and for your input. I'll now like to ask quickly, very quickly, Nina from Statelessness, if she's there, very quickly. But we really have to stay with the time. So just 1 or 2 minutes for the Statelessness input, and why they think the coordination and collaboration is really important to work with the refugee and statelessness. So Nina, are you there?
Yes. Hi, Anila.
Yes. Hi. So, sorry, yes, just very, very short, because we're really in the end of our part of this conference. So over to you.
Sure. Thank you very much. And thank you so much for having us here as observers and for giving me the space to intervene. Just very briefly, ENS is the European Network on Statelessness. We're a civil society network of about 150 organizations and individuals around Europe, including increasingly organizations led by people and communities affected by statelessness, including stateless refugees and activists. So, you know, working with and in partnership with people affected by statelessness is one of our priority areas, one of our key priorities in our strategic plan over the next 5 years. And we're really trying to strengthen and diversify and support more people affected by statelessness to speak out on the issue. So it's just been a real honour and pleasure to hear your interventions today and to learn from all of the incredible work that you're all doing around the world. Just briefly, a few things that we've been doing to try and develop this work. We've been organising workshops and facilitating spaces for stateless activists and organisations led by stateless people and communities to come together to tell us more about how we can work better together. And we've learned a lot from that experience over the last year, and we're planning to continue that work over the next few years. So some of the things that we've learned and that we've been doing around this theme of partnership is about how, you know, we as regional networks with infrastructure and resourcing and capacity can help to facilitate spaces for people to come together, to facilitate workshops, support the formation of advocacy groups for stateless communities, facilitate meetings with decision makers, and kind of be a hopefully participatory intermediary between people working on the ground and decision makers regionally. And we've learned that, you know, meaningful and effective partnership really takes time, it takes resources, it takes us listening to all of the expertise that all of you bring to the table, and we're not always great at doing that. So it's been a real, like I said, a real pleasure to be part of this discussion today. And we're really keen to keep doing that and keep learning. So please keep telling us what we should be doing better. And we're, I think the onus is also on us to come to some of these spaces and to listen and to hear what you're telling us and to learn from that. So we look forward to continuing to do that with you.
Thank you, Nina. So now I'm back to Najiba and Shaza for the last session.
We are looking at the time, and we are mindful that we've gone very much over than what we anticipated. I guess for our end, we really want to let those of you who weren't able to speak on this conference, we do apologize not having enough time and space for all of you to be engaged and making those comments. We have taken a very good notice of your comments in the chat box. All of those have been recorded and will be produced and will be used in our overall report. In GRN, we will be trying to come up with a report from this global conversation on COVID-19 around the gaps and the issues that you all have raised today, as well as the opportunities to act much more collectively together, as well as some of your suggestions around strengthening relationship with donors and providing flexibility in terms of structure and processes that exist with direct financing to refugee-led initiatives. So once again, I thank you all. I want to let you know that this is not going to be, this is just the beginning for GRN in terms of communicating around the challenges and obstacles that we, the refugees, face in our local situation as well as regional and international. I want to let you know that this global conference will be actually followed up with regional conference on COVID-19 response. So those of you who are coming from different regions on the call, I do want you to know that there are going to be more opportunities for you to be engaged on your regional context and to have much more collaboration and coordination around the response to COVID-19. So please look at our Facebook page on GRN as well as the Twitter. We also have GRN website. You just need to Google it and you will see it, or otherwise we will try to send you an email with the website, Facebook and Twitter page to basically be tuned for the dates and the times around the regional conversation that will take place around COVID-19. We really want to take the conversation again down to the locals to ensure that they're also having this opportunity. We know that there was a big number of participants wanting to be on this call, but unfortunately, as you can see, we've had a lot of crash on the network. People have been messaging and emailing us that they keep getting cut in and out, and that internet access itself is a barrier to participation, and we've heard a lot around those issues. So we really do thank you for your contribution. We will try to distribute the regional focal points for the GRN, so you know who you can get in touch with if you have any suggestions or ideas around the communication and info sharing from GRN to you. We've been looking at our own internal structure in GRN and trying to find out how much more innovative and inclusive and transparent and accessible we can also become as a network to those of you in the regions. And we really encourage you to get in touch with the regional chapters. We will distribute very soon a page that outlines the contact details of the regional chapter focal points. Do get involved with those regional chapters. There's so much being done and we need your support and input with that. And if those of you who wants to get involved in the regional conversation around the refugee leadership in response to COVID-19, again, there are more opportunities for you to do so. And on that note, again, I would like to use this opportunity to ask for your support in terms of the Refugees Rise hashtag. This is something that we are going to use at GRN. We want to make sure that we are able to promote the positive narrative around refugees contributing within this crisis emergency situation. So we really do request you all to tweet, to share hashtag Refugees Rise, include GRN in your conversations, do talk to us, do communicate with us, because I think when we talk to a lot of you, we tend to come across this communication gap a lot, and we can only do this together. And the last thing that I would also like to say, and I use this opportunity wearing my Asia Pacific regional hat, is that we do have Refugees Rise emergency appeal on COVID-19. I have shared my GoFunding link on the chat box. I really do request you, for those of you who are able and who can, to donate. Please donate, because the survival of people, especially the undocumented refugees, really depend on this emergency appeal. And for those of you who can't, we really want you to share with your networks, with your friends and colleagues who could support this appeal. With that, I would like to call in Shaza to do the closing remarks. And thank you all, and have a good evening. Shaza?
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you, everybody. I would like to thank all the refugees who was with us on this call from all over the world in the night, or maybe it's early morning. I really thanks everyone, because they are really show the committed and the responsibility for their community. I would like also to thank all the stakeholders and all the NGOs and international organizations and donors who are staying with us with a lot of patience to listen and to be as observers. And we really hope to hear from you if you have any comments or any ideas to work and to go forward together. So to send this to the email that was in the invitation as well. And I really appreciate that you were keep listening all this time. And sorry because we are not able to open the floor for every one of you. And also I would like to say that as we already said, all this comments and all this information will be shared after in the whole report, and we will share it with everyone, and the record of this conference will be shared also through the email and through our social media. So please stay tuned, and then you can share it from there and you can hear it again and again. I would also emphasize of everyone who has any ideas, gaps, any solutions, any thing that I want to share it with us, and we are not able to have all of this online, to send them to us through the email. And we are so happy to work all together and to improve our response to COVID, and also after COVID, to all this situation and the bad situation that refugees are living in. Thank you everyone, and good day, good night, or good afternoon for everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Have a good evening. Have a good night. Have a good morning.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
Thank
so much.
you.
Thank you so
Bye.
much.